Making decisions is work. This is something that has several implications for how we do our work as game designers, as programmers, as small team producers, or whatever kind of work we might be doing, or just in our lives. And there's a few different points that kind of come into this from different angles we're going to try to approach today. The first is that recognizing that as work, it can be done poorly or well, right? I mean, technically, is it work to build a brick wall that won't stand because you've done a shoddy job of it? Yeah, technically that's work, but you should do a better job of it. There's a right way to do that. Now, the same's true for making decisions, right? If you just pop a decision off the top of your head arbitrarily, that's shoddy work. That's like building a brick wall that's not going to stand. To do decision work correctly, there's a level of research involved, a level of investigation, possibly gauging the opinions or input of other relevant experts or other people it affects, of trying a few potential realities. That's part of what I do as a rapid prototyper is I try to inform decisions by we built it playable on device. Now we can make concrete decisions based on that as a way we couldn't when it was just floating around kind of as ideas. Another impact of it being decisions being work is that it needs to be scheduled. And again, this is equally applicable whether you're a programmer, designer, producer, any other line of work in or out of game industry, in your personal life or otherwise. Making decisions take time, they take energy, they take focus. There are, in a big enough company, people whose job it is essentially to be a decision maker and to do that responsibly and well, as opposed to someone else getting to have the privilege of that decision being made by someone else. Right? And one of the things we talk about with people sometimes is that if they're the kind of person they want to go to work, do what's asked of them, go home and sleep well at night, not worrying about was that the right decision or the thing to do, big companies usually the answer for them because someone else had to worry about is that the right thing to do. In a small enough company or working for yourself, you're constantly having to second guess or reevaluate, did I decide to be even doing the right thing no matter how well I'm doing it? That's separable work. Now, another part of all this, the other maybe third piece, is recognizing then that when you put in the effort, the work, the attention, the experimentation, the research, and otherwise to come up with a good decision and decide to move forward on something, count that as a win, right? That's maybe even more important than having just built a thing without having any made careful decisions about it. Because in terms of all the work you've saved yourself, assuming you can commit to this decision and stick with it, all the work you've saved yourself is work that now doesn't have to happen, right? You've kind of displaced, you can think of it that way, another 7 or 8 versions of something you might have had to build out, or even worse, right, had to gone down the wrong path from a poor decision that was poorly thought out, and had to scrap all the work anyway, so it's essentially lost time. All that gets saved by the work that goes into making a good decision, a sound decision. And actually, I'm going to add a bonus one because actually the context came up in the other day, was we have someone who's engaging with a project by sort of opening up all kinds of questions about it, and then bringing those questions to another team member. And this is understandable, because and especially as at the phase of the project they're at, they're trying to gauge what the lead wants and what the vision is, and all makes sense. But I think it has helped lead to this kind of as an illustrative example we can talk about. Whereas game designers, I know when I first had my first job in industry as a technical game designer, one of my reflexes was to generate a long list of questions and then put that big list of questions on someone else's desk, thinking that they should decide those things. And that was before I realized that decisions are work, that there's work to be done in distilling that, and that as a designer, there was 2 other kind of aspects that I really needed that I was missing as a beginner in the field. One of which was, okay, well, can I propose answers to these? Right? So rather than saying, here's a list of questions, which it's worthwhile to come up with what are the relevant questions, with each one, can I offer a placeholder answer? Here's what I think is a way forward that's consistent with the rest of what I've considered here. And obviously it's up for debate, right? It's up for reconsideration. I can then put those proposed answers with the questions in front of somebody else and ask for their input on, what's the rough spot here? Where do we need attention here? Because maybe 10% of that really matters to them, where they're like, you know what, we're not, in this case, I think it was actually, we were designing weapon upgrades for Medal of Honor Airborne. And so maybe someone else might have been like, I don't like the way you've kind of thought about the implementation of the silencer in terms of the way that's going to relate to the mechanics for how the AI will or won't be able to hear at certain ranges or in response to the weapon's use, or otherwise just not how we see it fitting into our game. Well, we can have that discussion without having to then also bother them with putting on them, hey, also figure out all these other details for the other 90% of the stuff. That was kind of my job to clarify those things, to come up with tentative answers that are good enough for us to focus energy on having discussions on reworking the parts that are rough. Or, a couple ways you can equip those kind of discussions is if it's at a point where there's like a big decision to be made. And you see this sort of thing happen all the time from people who are assistants to very powerful people. It's rather than saying, okay, here's a question, there's a question, it's to say, you know what, okay, I've plotted out 2, maybe 3 big differences in how we might move forward on this. Okay, here's option A, here's option B, here's option C. With each one, here's the trade-offs made, here's the implications of it, here's the rationale behind it, here's the things we're sacrificing to make that option work, but here's A, B, and C, there's some options. Which option do you want to go best on? And again, you can picture all kinds of it. It's just such an easy visual metaphor, kind of the bridge captain who sends off their expert in security, sends off their expert in data analysis, sends off their expert in the weapon systems or whatever, to come back to them with options, and they say, make B happen, make A happen, but it saved them the work of having to be versed in every single detail. Or, you know, we see the same thing happen all the time as to, you know, auto engineers or whatever, where they're saying, okay, look, you know, I can replace your brakes now, it's going to cost X, here's the trade-off for if you don't, the time frame in which that may or may not become a problem, and of course you got an honest engineer, an honest mechanic, they'll give you information that you can make an informed decision on, without them coming to you and saying, like, the following part is 30% degraded. And you're like, I'm not an auto mechanic. I can't operate on that level of information. Distill it for me. So, again, high level, decisions are work. There's all kinds of implications to that, to recognizing that, to appreciating that, to realizing sometimes maybe you're not giving yourself credit if you're putting in work to make good decisions. To also realize, again, that even though it's work, it's possible to do shoddy work. And to be careful about an arbitrary decision is not necessarily a decision well made and not of equal value to a decision that some real work can go into doing well. That's it for the day. I want to thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'm trying a different microphone camera setup today. Hopefully this works out okay. But yeah, have another video for you all tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.